silly things. So I also think I managed to make my setup even more complicated, but the fact that it works is nicer.
So are you basically turning your house into a into a new church multimedia room now? Whole church there, live broadcasts, the whole bit.
Well, I have a strange affection for technology, in that the older I get, the more I think we could all use a little less technology in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I still love playing around with tech, and there's magical things about it.
Sure. Agreed.
Hey, Brittany.
Hey.
Hey, Brittany.
Hello.
Welcome, Boyesons and Hartmans.
Hey, we're both here.
Hey, Sierra.
Hello.
Going to see if the Brocks are joining us tonight. How's the weather down in Texas?
Oh, wow.
It's hot. Just a little. I don't even know what it is today.
106.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think
He's
we
outside all
peaked
day.
at
I'm not.
97 up here.
Oh, really?
Pretty warm.
Ooh. It's humid down here for some reason. I don't know why. Is it humid up north too?
Yes. But I
Okay.
feel like it's supposed to be humid up here. I thought it was supposed to be dry down where you guys were.
Oh, heck no.
I thought too.
Oh, Dallas
Huh.
is humid as heck.
Too many lakes.
Huh. Thank you.
Banging out the window of a bird.
Yep, a bird flew into the window. All right, well, just while I wait to see if anybody else shows up, one thing that I do want to briefly run through is where we started last time. So I guess this is, I've backed myself into a corner here. So last time we were talking about the Lord, and we were kicking off the series, which there are 5 core doctrines that we're going to be focusing on, and they are in a particular order: the Lord, the Word, spiritual world, regeneration, and conjugal love. And so as we work through them, one of the things we covered with the Lord was we have to start there for a number of different reasons, but there's a few different passages that say that everything, the entire theology, hangs on the doctrine of the Lord. So that's why we started with the Lord, and that was last class. But then from the doctrine of the Lord, you work your way down to the doctrine of the Word, as we see here. Welcome, Brooks. So just so you guys know, the camera's up there. Okay. So, mhm. And I actually got it to record this time, so if somebody misses who would like to watch it, there will be a recording, unlike last time.
And the mic works.
And the mic works. We're rocking all sorts of promises that I broke last time. Ooh, just because you guys were there last time, does anybody remember the first nature of the Lord's love? I asked it 3 times.
I think it was 4 or maybe 5.
Fair enough. I did kind of drill that one.
Love someone, something outside of himself.
Yes, bingo. Yes, yes, it worked. Yes. So a few of the really important ideas that we talked about when what does the new church teach about the Lord is, well, what are the 3 essences? What are the 3 key parts of the Lord's love? And the very first is to love others outside of himself. The second is to desire to be one with them. And the third is to make them happy. So from that, you start to filter down into all of these other doctrines. If we understand what the Lord loves, we're going to understand why he gave us the word, what the word teaches us about the spiritual world, about regeneration, about conjugal love. But none of those things make sense unless we understand the Lord. So again, I really wish there was a recording that I could go back and like reference, but instead we'll just have to pretend like we're all on the same page here. The Lord is taken as a given in the foundation, and then you move to the word. So I think we're gonna get started. We're 7:10. Let me shift. Actually, let me start with a demonstration. What is this? Word.
How do I get
Oh, yeah. So the word, what else is this?
The New Church Canon of the Bible.
The New Church Canon of the Bible, that's a little more specific. So what else is this?
Divine truth.
Divine truth. So it's the word, it's the New Church Canon of the Bible, it's divine truth. It is all of those things. But we could go on to more. What else is this book?
What are you pointing at?
It says the word on it, by the way. I'm realizing that the poor people online, it's very, very zoomed out. But you have to trust me. This is the word. I'm holding a copy of the word.
Doesn't Genesis say the word is God?
The word is God. So this is God. Genesis starts that way. So does the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In fact, just because we're here, oh, you guys aren't going to be able to see it. Anyway, on the repository, there are the 3 different sacred languages. So next time, if you look at the profile picture of the Kansas City New Church, in the top left, you're going to see Greek letters that say an arche he ho logos, which is the beginning of the Gospel of John. In yes. In arche, the beginning, he ho. In the beginning was the logos, the word. So that idea of the word is really, really important. And let's see. All right. Hey guys, we have a website. Aha! Bingo. There we go. So that's the Greek on that side. And if we go over to the right, we now have Latin. Is there anybody brave enough to take a stab at those 3 Latin words? And I'll tell you, there's a theme to this whole thing. We have Greek, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. You guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. So you've got Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, and then English. And so the first one is in the beginning was the word. The English, thy word is a lamp. The Latin, give you est. Est is.
Is the word verbum word?
Yep, verbum word is the word. So what is dominus?
That in accounting.
Oh. Does anybody know what AD stands for?
After death.
That's what I thought for a long time too.
So what I choose to think.
AD stands for Anno Domini. Anno is year and Domini is Lord. The year of our Lord. So if at those fancy college graduations, if they're Bible-based or some sort of religious school, they'll say, in this 2024 year of our Lord, Anno Domini. That's why we say that. Fun fact. Anyway, so we have in the beginning was the word. We have the Lord is the word, and then at the bottom, Hebrew, you read right to left, it's Daber Yahuwah, which is the word of the Lord. So you might note that the common theme in all of this worship center is the word. And that's what we're talking about today. So, new church basics, the word. Okay, so the other thing, aside from being the Lord, that I was really hoping and driving at with holding up a copy of the word, is that this is the literal sense. So, the very first passage is taken from the Arcana Celestia, and it says, the character of the propheticals of the word, which would be of no use unless they had an internal sense. And I cropped it. That's why it doesn't sound right. But the idea is that the propheticals, all of those prophecies scattered throughout Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Lamentations, etc., says all of those would be of no use unless they had an internal sense. So it's talking about something literal, and then it's saying that the literal wouldn't be very useful if there wasn't something deeper. Is that a generally understood new church tenet?
Yes.
Okay.
Taking on those words BS.
So what I have found in my time is that people are generally comfortable with the idea of throwing out the literal sense. Yep.
No.
People are generally pretty comfortable with saying, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean that, or yeah, that doesn't apply to me.
That's true. Yeah.
There's something else. So I want to keep hammering this idea about the literal sense. As regards the precepts of life, such as all things in the Decalogue, which is a Greek word for the 10 words, which is the 10 commandments. So as regards the precepts of life, the 10 commandments, and many things in the law and the prophets, these being of service to man's very life are of use in both senses, both the literal and the internal. And if we're paying attention to references here at the bottom, it's 8 Arcana 2609, which is one number after the other. So first, it kind of shakes things up and it says, yeah, you know, actually the literal sense isn't that valuable if you take away the internal. But then it fires right back in the next passage, just in case we get confused, and says, but hey, the 10 commandments, maybe the golden rule, 2 great commandments, those seem like pretty good things. Those are in the literal sense. Please don't throw those out. So this comes to the idea of hands and face passages. Have you ever heard of that terminology? Okay, good. This was something that I'm positive, and I don't, my minister was mostly my dad growing up, so I don't want to throw him under the bus here, but I swear I never heard of this until I was in theological school. And I'm willing to bet if I went back through my dad's 20 years as a pastor in Carndale, he must have mentioned it somewhere, somehow. But nevertheless, hands and face passages is an important concept that we're going to dance around before getting into it. So we read, without doctrine, the word is not understood. And this is because the word, in the sense of the letter, consists purely of correspondences, in order that it may at the same time include things spiritual and celestial, and each word may be a container and support of these. For this reason, in the sense of the letter, divine truths are rarely naked, but are truths clothed. And these are called appearances of truth, many of which are adapted to the understanding of the simple. So, I don't know about you, but my eyes generally light up when reading along and innocently stumbling across the word naked. So that caught my attention immediately, and I was like, whoa, what's this talking about? It made me read it again, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So, what is a naked truth? I want to take a stab at what a naked truth is.
Something that can't be covered up. I mean, like it's
It's right there to see.
black and white, I guess is what you might say, but
Black and white, right there to see,
In all its glory.
all its glory. What you see is what you get. There's no covering it. There's no hiding it. So when the Lord says, you shall not murder, that's a naked truth. Yeah, everything in the word has a deeper meaning. But it's pretty obvious upon reading you shall not murder exactly what the Lord means. There's no scratching your head. I wonder if he really means there's no pontificating. It's just what you see is what you get. It's naked. There's no clothing. There's no hiding the truth. So, this is where I want to talk about God being angry, or God punishing, or God desiring animal sacrifice. These are not hands and face passages. These are not naked truths. Is God angry? According to the New Church idea of the Lord, do you think God is angry? No, no, no. 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 Good. Good, because that's right. There's a passage that even says God cannot even look on people with a stern countenance. Can't even look angry at you. So why does it say so many times in the literal sense that God is angry or that God punishes people? Isn't that kind of confusing? If we all know the new church idea is God's not angry, and yet it says he's angry. It says he smites people. He punishes. He takes vengeance. Those are called clothed truths. So we read further, the word in its ultimates. So what does the word ultimates mean?
Totality.
Totality.
He wants better.
I think so.
Entirety.
Entirety.
They do.
So if we were to say this is the ultimate showdown,
Like Clint Eastwood and Chuck Norris.
okay? Fine. Not the ultimate showdown. What about in if you've ever played League of Legends, Here's the Storm, they have ultimate moves.
Like the biggest, the greatest, yeah.
The biggest, the greatest. Well, the word ultimate simply means last.
What?
The word ultimate simply means last. So generally, colloquially, the way we use ultimates or the ultimate battle is like the greatest, the culmination, the last, everything builds up to this point. So it's the last in that sense, or the ultimate edition of a movie, or the ultimate version of something
Ultimate sacrifice.
would be the last sacrifice.
So you use it.
You can't make another one, the ultimate sacrifice. There's nothing left to give. So the Heavenly Doctrine uses the term ultimate or ultimates a lot. And it is at some points specifically referenced as interchangeable with the literal sense of the word. The ultimate sense or the literal sense, which is to say the same thing. It's the last thing. It's the starting point of the word is the Lord, the very last thing, the farthest away you can get is the literal sense. The spiritual sense is closer. The celestial sense is even closer to the Lord. So the literal sense is all the way at the bottom. It's the furthest, it's the last in that sense. Not so much how we use it like the ultimate version of the word, as in like the greatest. It's the ultimate as in it's the lowest or last thing. So the word in its ultimates, which is to say the literal sense, is like a man clothed with a garment, but with his face and hands naked. And where the word is thus naked, its goods and truths appear naked, as they do in heaven, such as they are in the spiritual sense. So, here are a few that I think of. The Golden Rule. It is very obvious when I read the Golden Rule that this is good advice to live by in the literal sense. I don't have to go digging any deeper than exactly what it says. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you live by that, very literally, you're going to be a much happier person. The 10 Commandments, if you read them literally and follow them, you're going to be really happy. So too with the 2 Great Commandments. Like, you don't have to dig deep into these ones They're naked truths. What you see is what you get. You don't have to wonder, what did the Lord mean when he smote Uzzah? I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a while. I'd have to go look something up in the Arcana. Not with the Golden Rule. You could. There is more to the Golden Rule. There's more to the Ten Commandments, but as they are written, they are useful right now. In the Psalms, happy is he whose God is the Lord. Right? I think that literally means what it says. I don't think you have to pontificate or reason or hash it out to try and figure out what it means. It means the person who understands that God is the Lord is going to be happy. That's what it means. That's what it says. It's true. So, what are some other hands and face passages? Also, the picture hopefully gets the idea across that everything else is covered except the hands and the face. That's the only place you can see the skin. That's why it's naked in that sense. Well, the rest of a person is clothed. Those hands and face passages are where you don't need to take the clothing off to understand it. I did take the easy ones, by the way.
Did.
The Lord's Prayer.
That's a pretty good one. Is there something deeper to the Lord's Prayer? Yes. But I would say it's useful as it's written.
The Beatitudes.
The Beatitudes, yes! Some of them.
Yeah.
I might argue that some of them are a little confusing.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
About the meek.
Yes. Maybe the meek, poor in spirit.
All of the laws that the Arcana says are still laws.
Well, I generally agree that that's true. I wonder if you could be any more specific. All right. So,
So,
next I want to
excuse
talk
me,
about.
Calvin,
Oh, yes.
I got a question. So concerning the Ten Commandments, so like thou shalt not kill, in the writings, it says that that's equivalent to not having hatred towards your neighbor. So if you limit it to just the literal sense, are you restricting how you can apply it in your life?
Well, interestingly, seeing as you brought it up, the heavenly doctrine in true Christian religion, when it goes through, it has 3 passages in a row. And it does this for all of the 10 commandments. It goes natural sense, spiritual sense, celestial sense. And so if you find that chapter in TCR, it's something like 280 and onward. So the 5th commandment is probably something like 310 or so. 3 passages in a row are going to tackle natural, spiritual, celestial, and the natural sense of the commandment to murder actually includes the bearing hatred, because it's referencing in the Gospels when the Lord says in the Sermon on the Mount, you have heard it said, you shall not murder, but I say to you, whoever holds hatred in his heart murders. And it says, this is the obvious meaning of murdering. Anyone can see that the Lord really meant both killing the body and putting people down, like, verbally. Which is fascinating to me, that rather than that being the spiritual sense, it actually just says, nope, this is the plain natural meaning. I'll reply to it. So this is being recorded, and I'll track down the passage after class and put it in the comments. It's fascinating stuff.
Okay.
Canon. Not like a military cannon. Which books count? Which are the real books?
Not Job.
Not Job, says Michaela. I agree. So this is a big block of text, and we're not going to read all of it. It starts off by saying the books of the word are all those which have an internal sense, and those which do not have an internal sense are not the word. Then it proceeds to give a one have internal sense. So if you've ever looked at, say, the Kempton translation or the old King James version that the General Church put out many eons ago, where they took out some of the books, this would be why. This passage is, it lists out, it tells us pretty clearly. So we have here a little screen that has all the books of the Bible in. This includes Job. This includes all the epistles. So if you're going through a typical Protestant Bible, the first 5 books are clear. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are all good. We agree. Then you get to Joshua and Judges. We're still on the same path. But then, poor Ruth. Nope. Ruth gets left out. But then we're back on the same page. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. No. Not 1st and 2nd Chronicles, not Ezra, not Nehemiah, not Esther, not Job. But then we have Psalms, and we agree on the Psalms. But not Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. So then we get into the prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. So the prophets we agree on. Interestingly, if you were to look at a Jewish copy of the Word, notably, it would not have the New Testament. So we don't agree there. But if we were to look at the Old Testament, we'll find a lot more similarity. Because, one, these are the older scriptural books. Other ones came along much, much later. However, the one that often gets left off is Daniel. Jewish copies of the Bible throw out Daniel.
Why?
I've had it explained to me a couple times, but no, I don't know why. But interestingly, one of the books in the Old Testament that predicts the second coming is the book of Daniel. One like the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. That's Daniel 7. And it later gets re-referenced in Revelation, but it actually starts in Daniel. And so at the beginning of True Christian Religion, if you open up the book, it says the universal theology of the new church as foretold by the prophet Daniel. And then it quotes Daniel. And technically, that's actually all part of the title. We just shortened it to True Christian Religion. So then the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, great. And we're going to speed through these because not Acts, which is written by Luke, if you didn't know that. So by Acts, too bad. But then Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians, Timothy, both of them, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, Peter, and the 3 epistles of John and Jude. So this is really where we start to deviate wildly. The epistles are left off and said not to have an internal sense. and then Revelation. Okay. So I've talked about the epistles before, and I know very few of you were actually at that class, but for the sake of those who were, the general overview is there's a couple different passages that specifically state, although the epistles, those letters of Paul, are not the word, they're nevertheless good books for the church. In other places, it says that in the epistles, Paul taught the doctrine of faith and love just as fervently as the Lord did while in the world. That's a pretty ringing endorsement, and as a born and raised general church person, that was not so much the feeling I had. By good books for the church, I kind of felt like don't read them. And the more I bring this up, the more I find I am not alone in that opinion. But the more I've read, the more I've come to see that there's a lot of good stuff that we're missing. One of the things it says about faith alone is that it's taken from one statement in Paul, falsely understood. So it's not even saying that Paul's the problem, it's saying people misunderstood. So that kind of rocked my world, and if we have time at the end, we can run back to this idea, but I've talked about the epistles in a number of different classes, and I want to get onto this. Not a single word or even iota can be omitted in the sense of the letter of the word without an interruption of the internal sense. Therefore, by the divine providence of the Lord, the word has been preserved so entire as to every word and every point. So, just because I like testing people's knowledge of references, what is HD other than high definition?
Heavenly Doctrine.
Which is, it is.
That's what it says.
It is what it says. It's the shorter version of NJHD, New Jerusalem and its Heavenly Doctrine. What about WH? It's not Bush.
It's White Horse, isn't it?
Bingo. Yes, White Horse. You did. I heard that. Was good. And then our AC is Arcana. Just a interesting Heavenly Doctrine literacy note. The Arcana comes before both of those other books. In fact, both New Jerusalem and its Heavenly Doctrine and White Horse are almost entirely quotations from the Arcana. So when you see me coyly quote something from HD and then see White Horse and Arcana, chances are it was originally written in the Arcana and then got copied into Heavenly Doctrine and then again into White Horse. So it's just the exact same quote
Okay,
in three different places.
So White Horse is actually part of,
Yep.
we're missing that one.
It's in Miscellaneous Theological Works.
Okay, maybe we have that one.
Oh, missing that. No, we
I have
haven't.
not seen.
Yep.
Sorry.
I've never seen that one.
Nope.
Yep. There's very few. It's so small that to print it out, I think it's something like 40 pages, which it
It
gets
is
very
quite
hard to
interesting.
bind something at that size. Anyway, the big point, you can't take out even a single word without ruining the internal sense. So, that to me is a very fascinating point, which we'll get back to in a minute. So, here are questions. If we can't remove things without ruining the internal sense, how about verbal descriptions of maps? Like in the book of Joshua, when there are 5 chapters in a row, as they've conquered the land of Canaan and they're dividing up the inheritance of the tribes. And it says from the brook of Kidron to Ashkelon to the setting of the sun to, and it just lists location after location after location. And it says, and this is the inheritance of Reuben. Then it jumps right into the next one. Can't take that out. Remember? Not even a single word.
Your Uncle Willard was very specific about this, and those are extremely important. No idea what they mean, but they're very important.
What about genealogies? Lists of names.
Yep.
Genesis. How about the beginning of Matthew? Did anybody remember that one? Part of the Christmas story? Everybody's least favorite part of the Christmas story? That's important. What about detailed descriptions of abrogated laws? So earlier, Michaela referenced a passage in the doctrine that says, well, there's a bunch of these Old Testament laws that you don't have to keep anymore. Those are abrogated. And then there's ones you do have to keep. So what about all those laws that we don't have to keep anymore? Surely we don't need to read those anymore. Oh, kind of sounded like we're supposed to. So, pay special attention to the picture here. You can thank ChatGPT for this image. I tried, I spent, it's not a real word.
Oh,
Like,
I have no idea what that is.
That's the Episcopalian book.
the Doyasenkent is not a word. I looked at it multiple times and I kept trying to find, like, is this some weird Latin word? It's not. Then I was like, all right, can you change Doyasenkent to the Bible or the word? And it's like, sure thing. And it spat out the exact same image. And I was like, not quite. After going around a few times, I decided this was pretty good. So if we read the passage, when a person of the church who is in the good of faith reads the word, angels adjoin themselves to him and are delighted in the person because of the wisdom which then inflows to them through the word from the Lord. From this is the conjunction of heaven with people, which would not be possible without the word. So, if we go back to the three natures of the Lord's love, that second one is that he desires to be one with people, which is conjunction, which is not possible without the word. So when we're talking about really important things, for what helps us meet the Lord's goals for the world, reading the word is a big one. It's not the only one, but it's a big one. And I do, even though it's ChatGPT, I like the idea of their angels being around us when we read the word and them being happy about it. When I am slogging through genealogies, I'm not often happy about it. But somewhere out there, there are angels who are smiling and having a great time because somebody finally read the genealogies. So there are some poor, poor angels out there who are really sad that their chapter of the word always gets skipped. But for those few people who read the genealogies, you're really helping those angels out.
Do we hear anywhere why why specific angels are specifically happy about the genealogies?
No. But the general teaching is that for every single part of the word, there is a society of heaven that lights up when you read the word, that section. So I don't know if it's probably because of what they love. And it's probably like a really deep love, but there's a part of me that can't help but picture them getting to the next life and being kind of disappointed that they're going to the genealogy society.
At least
With Stephen Cole.
societies are specifically aligned with passages from our canon of the word. So it's not that we're disappointing societies by not reading the epistles.
Correct. There are not. Matt, actually, I don't know, but I cannot promise that there are societies of the epistles. There might be, but I don't think it's, I would be hesitant to apply the same teachings about the word, because the thing that the angels are in is the internal sense. That's what conjoins us with angels. And if they don't have an internal sense, it would seem unlikely that by reading them, we would be conjoined to the angels of the internal sense.
Which is why they reference reads the word, and the word is what we were just talking about, what those books are.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Do the angels get just as happy if a non-new church person is reading?
Well, just as happy? Probably not. But, you know, the conjunction, am I happy when I see an old friend? I'm pretty happy when I see Gerd. I'm a lot happier when I see my wife. But it's not that I'm not happy when I see Gerd. It's just a poor comparison. So similarly, the more similar the love, the closer the angels are going to feel and the happier they're going to be. And I would also remind us that the church, there are two essentials to the new church: belief in the Lord, life according to the Ten Commandments. So I know a lot of people who are not baptized new church who do fit that category. They believe in one God and they keep the Ten Commandments. When we're talking like the new church, it's pretty broad. So
Is that what you consider church universal?
yeah. But the new church universal, not just like
Right.
there's this other church. It's
Right.
like, well, this is the church.
Right.
So the ultimate sense, which is the sense of the letter, there we go, and fourth in order, contains in itself the three interior senses, which are for the three heavens, when a man on the earth is reverently reading the word. Therefore, the sense of the letter is that from which and through which there is communication with the heavens, and also through which man has conjunction with the heavens. So we're supposed to read the word, and this throws it back at us. Do it literally. Read from the literal sense. As a minister, I find myself guilty of perhaps overemphasizing the doctrine and under reading the word. I am working on reading the literal sense more because of passages like this. The emphasis, do I think there is some conjunction when you read the writings? Sure. But again, the internal sense, the presence of the deeper senses in the literal sense is what's conjoining us. The angels are in the higher senses, we're in that literal sense. And when we read that, they hear the spiritual sense and we're brought closer together. When you're reading the spiritual sense, which is the doctrine, when you're reading that part, you're kind of already there, so there's probably some connection, but I don't think it's the same. Which is why, if you'll note in a church service, there's never a time when we don't read the word. There are lots of times where most of what the sermon will be about is probably from the doctrine, but you better bet that the lessons are always going to start with the literal sense, because that's the foundation. So that by slide, there are 17 slides, by the way. We are on slide 15. Up until now, we've pretty much just been talking about the power of the literal sense. So I do want to talk about the deeper sense here. The spiritual sense. This second coming of the Lord is effected by means of a man to whom the Lord has manifested himself in person, and whom he is filled with his Spirit, that he may teach the doctrines of the new church from the Lord by means of the word. I affirm in truth also that from the first day of my call, I have not received anything whatever pertaining to the doctrine of that church from any angel, but from the Lord alone will I read the word. So, is this the spiritual sense, or is it something else?
I'd say it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think spiritual sense or no?
Thumbs up.
Could be something else too.
I think continually
Could be
to
celestial.
build.
Cheese. Cheese.
So when the Arcana says, and the celestial sense is this, is it really the spiritual sense?
Not if it just said it was the celestial.
All right, well,
Says both. in
I
some
can get that
cases.
one. The heavenly doctrine has a wide range of things. What I will say is the heavenly doctrine, all of it, all of the books taken together are called the Lord's heavenly doctrine. They are all heavenly teachings for us to use. But I would not say that all of them are the spiritual sense. But maybe I will. So, it is known that the church is in accordance with its doctrine, and that doctrine is from the word. Nevertheless, it's not doctrine, but soundness and purity of doctrine. Consequently, the understanding of the word that establishes the church. It's TCR, that's True Christian Religion. And then back to HD, New Jerusalem and its heavenly doctrine. What the divine has revealed is with us the word. So, is that set of green books the word?
No.
Is it from the divine?
Yes.
Has it been revealed? Doesn't that make it the word? But doesn't the word need an internal sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there's different ways that the heavenly doctrine uses the term the word. So I am very comfortable saying that the heavenly doctrine is the word of God. Insofar as we understand that it's the word as in the Lord spoken. These are teachings from the Lord. In that way, I'm happy to call it the word. But I do think it gets a little confusing because I don't believe it has an internal sense, which way back about 10 slides ago, we already established that in order for it to be the word, it must have an internal sense. So terminologically, what do we call them? I have started to drift away from calling them the word. My fear is that we start to undervalue the doctrine and don't hold it on the same level. In terms of authority in my life, the doctrine and the Old and New Testaments hold equal weight to me. But yet, I would not call them both the word in the same way. Even though, I do believe that the heavenly doctrine is something divine that the Lord has revealed to us, which is the word.
To me, I picture it as a building block. Where you have the word as the foundation and then the, in order for it to continue to build, you have to have the doctrine. Keep it forward to grow.
I didn't go yet.
Oh, wow. That's so we glossed right over it. Build your house on the rock. So it would have made a lot more sense to include this at the very end. But like Stephanie said, the literal sense is a foundation. It is the rock that we're supposed to build on. But where do you live? Do you live on the rock or do you live in the house? You're supposed to live in the house. And the house is doctrine. So if you look up the internal sense, if you look up what a house means, what's a house built up of? It's built up of truths taken together that help form living. Walls are made up, you picture a stone wall, and a stone represents the truth. And you take a bunch of stones, a bunch of truths, and you put them together, and now you have a wall, which is doctrine, of which you construct houses out, in which you can then live. So the foundation for all that we do starts with that rock, with reading the literal sense. Just take it as it is, read it, enjoy it, and then, understandably, the Lord says it's going to be confusing, that there are things that are confusing, that they're clothed truths. And so you need the doctrine to help explain those parts. But then you need to explain them and go back to the word. So it's the cycle of doctrine. You start with the word, you learn a little more doctrine, so you understand the word better and read it again. And then, as you understand the word better, you're going to learn more doctrine. In the sermon we had last week, in the Beatitudes, the doctrine points out that there's two different ways that the Lord says, blessed are the poor. In Luke, he says, blessed are the poor, full stop. And in Matthew, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit. And so doctrine is taking both of those truths, both of those stones, looking at them and seeing how they fit together. That's doctrine. And it'll be confusing if you think that only poor people are happy. You haven't done doctrine yet. That's just the literal sense. But when you take the two stones and put them together, now we have an idea of what the Lord wants.
Was that why when we had a sermon about the
That is
the New Jerusalem coming down in the city and the gates and the walls going up? That's
Yeah.
part of the
Yep. Okay, so that is the end of what I have to say, but what do other people have to say? All right. It's pretty fun, isn't it? Blah. Okay, let me put it this way then. What was the most different idea about the word that you heard tonight? Because I'm pretty sure you all have some foundation in what the word is. What's something you didn't expect?
kind of an oddball one-off, but one thing that I did not expect was that question and then the response of, would angels be more rejoiceful of a new churchman reading the word versus just anyone? I never even gave that a thought or a consideration before in my life, and not so certain I buy that either.
Fair enough. So, to put it to you guys, why, let's just build out some pros and cons. What might be the reasons why they would be happier with a new churchman? And what are the reasons that they wouldn't?
Somebody who's not a new churchman might want to read the word to twist its truths rather than use them to serve the Lord.
But I don't think in heaven though, not as an angel.
No, but that's what we're.
But we're reading Earth.
Gotcha. But was Sean talking about, he's talking about an angel.
Between a new churchman and a non-new churchman reading the word and the amount of delight angels have in that.
I thought he was talking about the heaven. Sean, were you talking about the angels in heaven being new churchmen angels or?
No,
Oh,
this,
here.
we were talking about the societies of heaven that can join when a certain portion of the word is read by someone here on earth. And my understanding of the commentary was when a new churchman is reading that passage of the word, that there's a greater affection for that individual as opposed to, say, someone without any exposure to the new church reading the same passage, and the angels being, well, all right, well, that guy over here, not really new church, but we're happy. This guy, he's new church. All right, thumbs up.
Well, so two things. One, going back to definitions of the new church, which I think I talked about a bit.
Sure, I buy that.
So, this guy's new church. I think the similarity, angels gather together in societies based on similarity of love. So if someone who keeps the commandments and loves the Lord is reading the word versus someone who breaks the commandments and doesn't acknowledge the Lord, I think the angels are going to feel more of an affinity with the person who's reading it from, a genuine point of view versus non-genuine. So not like baptized new church or only those who have read the heavenly doctrine, but I mean, if we're talking belief in one God and keeping the 10 Commandments, that's just a good person at that point.
Sure, but with that, I would take maybe the argument one step further, Calvin. I'd say, even in the hands of a truly wicked person, having the influx of heaven and the Lord coming through him, would certainly make one. I would certainly think that the heavens, if simply that book was opened and the words were going through the optic nerve and transmitting into the brain, so on and so forth, I would think that there would have to be some level of conjunction that at its core would make a heavenly society think, oh, wow, this is an opportunity to take this very wicked person and perhaps make him better, and even be more excited at that opportunity than something else, than somebody that's returning to the word on a daily basis as we're taught to do. I would think there would be an incredible amount of joy in that. Now, I could be completely off base, and I'm certainly, this is just my thought. I'm exploring the idea here.
Well, yes, 100% they're going to be happy.
Sure.
The doctrine's very clear. I was asked, are they happy?
Right, happier,
And so I'm not
I don't
saying
know.
that angels are unhappy with even the most degenerate person reading the word. When the word is being read, angels are happy. In
Sure.
fact, one of the places the doctrine talks about is with the most wicked of the children of Israel. And it goes on to describe, a bunch of the nasty kings that they had.
Mhm.
And it says, but even they were conjoined to heaven when they read the word.
Sure.
So
That makes perfect sense. I guess maybe where I'm getting hung up is in our, where we're delineating the word happy into levels of happiness for, assuming levels of happiness for a heavenly society based on, who knows, maybe we're talking in circles here. Maybe, now that I think about it, maybe it's, not, maybe you are, maybe translation's right. Maybe what you're thinking is right. So
So
I guess
don't
I was just-
It is
I was
interesting, the
uncomfortable with-
idea of more joy at, more joy at a sinner coming
Right.
to but I guess sort of the idea of they have to be repenting and actually genuinely reading it, maybe.
Well, right, and I think with that, some people may say, okay, check mark my list, I've got to read 5 verses, pat on my back, tell myself, hey, I got through my 5 verses, I'm good to go. Whereas maybe somebody else opening the word being, very
Exactly.
excited to see what these next 5 verses are gonna say.
Right.
But that's why it's, that's not our place to judge what the person's.
right.
So it's like, okay, and, go from there, but.
Also,
I guess ultimately I'm thinking like a human being where I would, I guess most human beings, if you, like Steph said, if you're just checking a box on your to-do list, yes, it's wonderful. It's a good use, a good purpose. But if it's routine for you, and then over here's this guy that's been downtrodden for decades, and he opens up the word, starts reading a little bit, I would think that there might be a greater level of excitement and happiness in that revelation as opposed to the guy that checked the box. But that just might be a human emotion or a human interpretation.
well, I guess something else I would just, as we've been talking it out, there's also teachings that say that the angels are not at all aware of specific people. So I guess if I'm going back and revising, there's a reasonable chance that it doesn't make any difference because they're not aware. Or if they are aware, it's not specifically, they're going to feel the delight of understanding the spiritual sense. Well, the natural sense is being read, but they're not going to know, that must be a good new church person. They're just going to be inspired with the feeling of, wisdom from the Lord. So I certainly don't want anyone to go away with the idea that there's like angels aren't happy with non-new church people.
I would imagine that it's my take on that would be there, kind of like in those societies there would be kind of like a decibel meter or something like that, where a few people are reading it low level, then a lot of people are reading it a loud level, and the decibel level keeps going up like that. So maybe that's how it works. I don't know. Wow.
Somebody who reads the word and it has the internal sense immediately flowing in because of their understanding of the internal sense is like Chiefs Stadium on a big Sunday against the Raiders.
There you go.
Oh boy.
You
Do
mean
they have the
Monday night.
same signs, Ivan?
Say it
Pumping
again?
the crowd up, louder.
Right. Let's get loud.
Back to your original question for discussion, I think what surprised me the most, and I guess I've thought about this before, but never thought it important enough to really ask, but whether or not you should call the heavenly doctrine's the word. And what's the use in doing that versus, I mean, I think after this class, I think it's more useful to make the delineation between the word and the heavenly doctrines, but surprising.
All my pastors used to say, hear now the word of the Lord as is written in the Arcana Celestia.
It's funny. The general church for years and years and years was very clear that this is the authoritative word of God. And then it started to change when they split with Nova Hierosolyma, because the internal sense to the internal sense, that was the sticking point. And so suddenly the general church started to back off, like, whoa, wait, that's what you guys mean by the word? Oh no, that's not what we mean. And so the general church, since like 1940, the amount of new church life articles that refer to them as the word has dropped precipitously. And I do think it is directly related to a split in the church, where I think that you can hold, yeah, it's the word in one sense, but it's not the word in that sense. But it's cleaner to just never call it the word. It's divine revelation, sure, but it's not the word. So, here's a question. Given what we've discussed, how do you feel about binding copies of the writings into the Old and New Testament?
Broke up a little bit. Would you repeat that, please?
How do you feel about binding a copy of the Heavenly Doctrine with the Word?
That's a big book.
The game showing.
Well, let's see. In Westville, they have such a copy. In Boynton Beach, Toronto, Mitchellville,
What?
Bernathen,
The writings that they choose out of
True
curiosity.
Christian Religion.
Really?
Yep. So there's one major one. It has the Old Testament in Hebrew, the New Testament in Greek, and then a copy of True Christian Religion in Latin. And those back in the 80s got put together and given out to a bunch of different societies. And they're very pretty and they look cool, and having the original language is neat as like an altar copy. I don't know. I haven't been there since 2009. But
I feel like it does. I feel like in some
It
grade
wouldn't
school
surprise
religion class, I feel like I remember going and looking at it and seeing the 3 different languages in it.
okay. Bernathen took a very old one from like the 16th century, and then right on the end of it sewed in to this massively ancient book, Latin copy. Fascinating stuff. Makes me a little uncomfortable.
I don't think it's necessarily evil or bad, but I don't think it's good. But then again, can it truly be neutral?
I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I was raised that and I know new churchmen were famous at splitting hairs. We can, you know, I'd be inclined to say something to the effect of that, and maybe this is just the way that I was raised, but again, the majority of the pastors that I grew up with and continued to listen to and learn from over the years, as they approached the writings in their sermons, would always say, "Hear now the word of the Lord as written in the Carta Celestia," or as in any number of any volume of the writings. I guess I just don't split that hair as narrowly as others would. And I understand what you're saying with what we talked about earlier.
Why?
But
Why?
Throughout our lives, I do believe the majority of us have been taught that
Why?
the writings are a direct influx of the Lord's wisdom and his intent to Swedenborg. So would that not be the word of the Lord? So therefore, would that not be as I don't know. Would that not be as sacred as the old New Testaments? And so anyway,
I'll go there.
Right.
just thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I am actually comfortable calling them the word, but it's like the word with an asterisk for me.
Yeah,
like,
and guess what?
see
All
the
records-
footnote at the bottom.
And what do you do with something that has an asterisk after it? You say, that really didn't count.
Say it's not a hands and face passage. Going back, you hear ministers say, "Hear now the word of the Lord as it is written in." I don't know that I've ever heard that before
Do the
a book of the
hardest.
writings.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
I always hear it from as it is written in Genesis, and then later, and reading further from the Heavenly Doctrine.
That's been the last 20, 30 years, I'd imagine.
Okay. I wouldn't know before then.
Sorry, I'm dating myself. Calvin, am I wrong? Am I just remembering something that isn't true? I'm happy to chalk it up to a senior moment.
I don't know. I mean, I also don't go back far enough and haven't looked at enough sermons, watching out for that. But I would generally imagine that the further, that I'm betting up until the 60s, from like the 40s till the 60s, with a very recent church split, that people were probably pretty hesitant to use the term the word, because the church that we split with was calling it the Third Testament.
Well,
Which does make that one makes me really uncomfortable.
Sure. Well, maybe I was just maybe I was listening to Hemishalier ministers and didn't realize it. Who knows?
I believe Kempton still does that. If I recall correctly, I think Kempton will still say that about the doctrine. At least the people I've heard preaching there will say that.
That it's the word.
Well, they'll say what Sean was saying. Not that it's the word, but hear now the word of the Lord as it is written in Celestia. They'll say that. But again, I think that just because I still don't think that necessarily contradicts anything. I don't know. If possibly we're getting caught up in semantics or not, but hear now the word of the Lord. Obviously, it is from the Lord. It is the word of the Lord. The doctrines are that, but it's not necessarily, as referenced earlier in the class from that passage, sort of the word, the capital W, the Old and New Testament that have the internal sense. Because obviously, as we all believe, the doctrines don't have any internal sense. That's reserved, the capital W word as it's talking about that book, right? But that doesn't mean that the doctrine isn't the word of the Lord,
Right, so like the very, very last passage in the slideshow was, the word is what the divine has revealed to us. Like, well,
Right.
I fervently believe the Lord revealed that. So if it's from the Lord, it's divine. If he revealed it, it's the word.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100% Braden. And Sean, I mean, I don't think any of us actually disagree on the substance. I do think, like you say, Sean, we have a proclivity to split hairs.
I guess there's something that I think about, an example in like when you read the Christmas story and you think about every year at Christmas time, you're like, well, yeah, I know the Christmas story, of course, you know, you've got the basics, da, da, da. But I'm amazed that every time I listen to the sermons about the Christmas story, there's something new that hits. And it's just like it's the word being a living word that is actually speaking to us. And it's amazing. And I don't know, not saying that the doctrine's not, but when you hear the words of the Christmas story from, you know, from the New Testament and you're reading through it, there's something at that point in time that hits you. And then when you read further from the doctrine to explain it, it kind of comes more, you know, alive too. So it's kind of a combination. It's building together to go forward with what you're.
Yeah.
So, just as an example.
Good point. Yeah, the writings are hard to get really, writings are kind of hard to get, what's the word? Emotional about, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They don't, there's something somewhat, very intellectual about them as opposed to where the word can kind of, hit you in a certain spot. So.
Mhm.
Not saying the writings can't, but it's harder probably because of I won't even speculate as to why, but just from my experience.
It's almost like the Heavenly Doctrines to me is a dictionary to what is not understood in the word. And I say dictionary, I mean that's very small but when you look up a word because you don't understand what the word means, or you want a better description of the word, and you go to find the definition, you go, wow, there's like 6 different definitions of this word. I had no idea. And so then you go through and you're starting to read that, and then you get more, you know, I don't know, it opens your eyes to see more things. But like what Sean was talking about, when you're reading the word, there is more of a connection. I can't really explain it, but I understand what you're saying, John, on that part.
Well, you know, when you read through the Psalms, it tugs on the heartstrings. When you read through Jeremiah, it punches you in the face. So there's different flavors, but I do think that the Heavenly Doctrine generally does not err on the emotional side, though you can find emotional parts per page or per book. The amount of, you know, emotionally driven passages are pretty low compared to something like the Book of Psalms, very emotionally high. I would say something like Leviticus is fairly low. There's not a whole lot of emotion in there. There is, but you know,
laughter.
But the Old and New Testament's a lot shorter in terms of page count, and so like the density of emotional energy is way more present. All right, well, I think that's a good spot to cut it. We're before 8:30, which means less than an hour and a half, which is, I feel like Zoom an hour and a half is about as long as it has. At this point, you guys need snacks. I haven't seen you guys picking out, so.
That's the advantage of being a king.
You have your civic duty to figure out on snacks. So
Go like that.
thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And
Wait,
the website is gonna have the Zoom links embedded in it too. And
offering cookies. So nice of you, Ivan.
If you were all here, you could share in Liza's excellent hot.
Yes, in 2 weeks, I'll have to come up there.
That's right.
All right.
all right.
Just to have Ivan hand me a cookie.
I'll put it in my pocket.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Take care all.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye-bye, Hartmans. Bye, Mr. Harris.